The Grand Council of the Seven Systems sat in their orbital chamber, massive view screens displaying the approaching human fleet. Councillor Vex, the eldest among them, shook his elongated head in dismissal. "These humans," he said, mandibles clicking with amusement, "they'll be defeated within hours. Their technology is primitive, their tactics predictable." The other councillors nodded in agreement. For centuries, the Dralathi Imperium had conquered species across 3 galactic arms. Humans were simply the next in line, an insignificant species from a backwater solar system that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. The simulation project's total human defeat in approximately 6 standard hours, announced Admiral Thorne, his scaled skin reflecting the blue light of the tactical displays. "Their vessels will be no match for our phased matter cannons." What the Dralathi failed to understand was humanity's greatest strength. Adaptability born from thousands of years of conflict among themselves. Captain James Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, humanity's flagship. His weathered face remained calm despite the odds. The tactical officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, looked up from her console with concern. "Sir, our long-range scans confirm at least 30 Dralathi dreadnoughts. That's 3 times what we expected." Miller nodded. "And that's why their overconfidence will be their downfall, Lieutenant." The human fleet consisted of only 12 capital ships and their support vessels, outgunned and outmatched by conventional metrics. But Miller and Admiral Taylor had developed an unconventional strategy. "All vessels execute Operation Thunderclap," Miller ordered. The human fleet suddenly split into 3 formations. While 2 groups engaged the Dralathi front lines in what appeared to be a suicidal charge, the 3rd group vanished from sensors completely. On the Dralathi command ship, Admiral Thorne frowned at his displays. "They're attacking directly. Foolish. And where is their 3rd battle group?" The answer came moments later when 5 human vessels reappeared behind the Dralathi fleet. During the previous month's skirmishes, human engineers had been studying Dralathi sensor technology and had developed a method to temporarily mask their energy signatures by cycling their drives in a precise pattern. "Impossible," Thorne hissed as human ships opened fire on his unprotected rear flank. Meanwhile, the 2 frontal human attack groups executed what would later be called the Thermopylae maneuver, deliberately creating a narrow engagement corridor that negated the Dralathi numerical advantage by forcing them to funnel their ships into a concentrated kill zone. Back in the council chamber, the members watched in growing horror as their carefully orchestrated battle plan collapsed. "How are they adapting so quickly?" demanded Councillor Zinn, pounding her armored fist on the table. "They're changing tactics faster than our battle computers can generate countermeasures." What the Dralathi couldn't comprehend was that humans weren't relying solely on computers. Years of studying historical Earth battles, from ancient naval engagements to modern conflicts, had taught human commanders to blend intuition with technology, something the algorithm-dependent Dralathi had long forgotten. 3 hours into what was supposed to be a 6-hour rout, Admiral Thorne was dead, his flagship destroyed by a bold maneuver from Captain Miller's vessel. The Dralathi formation was in disarray. On the Defiant, Miller grimaced as damage reports flooded in. They were winning, but at a terrible cost. Nearly half the human fleet was crippled or destroyed. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "the Dralathi command structure is collapsing. Their ships are beginning to break formation." Miller nodded. "Transmit the surrender terms we discussed. Let's end this before more lives are lost." In the council chamber, silence reigned as the transmission came through. The terms were surprisingly merciful: immediate cessation of hostilities, recognition of human territorial sovereignty, and an exchange of technological knowledge. "This is unexpected," Councillor Vex admitted. "They could demand much more." "Perhaps they understand something we don't," replied Councillor Mira, the youngest among them. "Perhaps victory isn't about destruction, but about what comes after." The council voted unanimously to accept the terms. 6 hours after the battle began, the exact time they had predicted for human defeat, the Dralathi Imperium instead signed its first-ever Treaty of Equals. 2 weeks later, Miller stood before the United Earth Parliament, explaining the victory. "The Dralathi didn't lose because of inferior technology," he explained. They'd lost because they'd never faced an adversary that thrived on chaos. For thousands of years, they conquered through overwhelming force. But humans, we've spent our history finding ways to defeat overwhelming force. In the years that followed, the relationship between humans and the Dralathi evolved from wary peace to genuine alliance. Human adaptability complemented Dralathi technological precision. Together, they formed the core of a new interstellar cooperative that would eventually unite dozens of species. On the anniversary of the battle, Admiral Miller, as he was now known, and former Admiral Thorne's successor, Fleet Commander Lorne, dedicated a memorial to those lost on both sides. They predicted our defeat within hours. Miller said during the ceremony, not understanding that humans have always achieved their greatest victories when facing impossible odds. It wasn't about our ships or our weapons. It was about our refusal to accept the limitations others place upon us. Fleet Commander Lorne, who had studied human history since the conflict, added his own observation. The Council believed victory was inevitable because that was what their data told them. They failed to account for the human spirit, something no algorithm can quantify. The memorial bore a simple inscription in both human and Dralathi script. Here we learn that the universe's greatest force is not technology, but determination. The prediction of humanity's quick defeat had become instead the first chapter in humanity's ascension to the stars.